Welcome into Road to the Draft, brought to you by Raymond James. Casey Phillips here with senior writer and editor Scott Smith. This is where we break down all the things that we think are possibilities in the draft for the Buccaneers, how everything else going on might affect what they do in the draft. And of course, this week that means free agency and a guy named Tom Brady. So that ended up being very helpful for us to have a lot to talk about this week. And I think part of what's funny is the guys you had prepared to talk about this week may not end up being quite as important to talk about as we originally thought. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair to say. And I would say this last week on the road to the draft, we're going to be talking about a lot of maybe like signposts about things that are up ahead that we're not officially to yet, depending upon when you watch this video. There are some things that the Buccaneers have officially done, like Ryan Jensen, Carlton Davis, Aaron Stinney all being re-signed. There are some things that are reportedly going to happen that we can't officially say are happening, but we can talk about the reports.
Yes, and by the time you watch this, maybe they are official. But for right now, so let's go ahead and start with those ones that are official, that we had talked about how, in particular, the interior line was an area that we thought, we knew the team was going to address one way or the other when Ali Marpet retired, and then you knew you had Alex Kappa and Ryan Jensen as free agents. There was a lot of uncertainty there. Now you know that Aaron Stinney is back, you know that Ryan Jensen is back, and there are reports that Alex Kappa will not be back. So looking at those different things, how does this affect what you think the Bucs might do in the draft, particularly when it comes to interior line?
You mentioned the two that are official as of the filming of this, in Jensen and Stinney, and the report of Alex Kappa going to the Bengals. There's another report that the Buccaneers are going to be trading a fifth-round pick to the Patriots for a starting caliber guard, and a very good one, in Shaq Mason. So the last time, it was actually earlier this week, but I'd written it even before the start of free agency. The last time I did a mock draft, I had the Bucs trading down a little bit from 27 and taking Texas A&M guard Kenyon Green. He's a guy that's been in the mock drafts, a lot of the mock drafts all year, usually in the last 10 picks or so. So he's a guy that could be there at 27. And two mock drafts ago, I gave the Bucs Zion Johnson from Boston College, who we talked about last week, who was a big riser since the combine. And I subsequently, so, there's a million mock drafts, and they're fun to just skim through. Subsequently saw a ton of people mocking guards, specifically those two, to the Buccaneers. And it made a lot of sense like 5 days ago. Now I don't think the Buccaneers really need to spend a first-round pick on a guard, because with Mason, reportedly, and Stinney and Jensen, that's potentially your three starting interior guys right there, and you can be happy about that. So. That's another position where it seemed a lot more likely a week ago, and I think if you watch the mock drafts now, you're going to see that falling off and people going in other directions.
Yeah, and I think another position that was widely discussed as being a potential need for the Buccaneers, or at least being a position of uncertainty at the time, was wide receiver.
Absolutely.
And now there are a lot of reports. There have not, for us, been the official things done yet, unlike our ability to talk about some of the official ones at the line. But a lot of reports when it comes to the wide receiver position where, similarly, maybe this isn't the position of need in the draft that the Buccaneers might have thought it was a few days ago.
And I'll tell you what those reports were. Again, we're not making it official.
Yes.
Chris Godwin, who was already on the franchise tag, reportedly agreeing to a 3-year deal, the addition of Russell Gage, the former Falcon, and the re-signing of Brashad Perryman. And then you also have Tyler Johnson, Scotty Miller, Jalen Darden. So suddenly, Cyril Grayson, who came on real strong at the end. It doesn't look like a position of need that much anymore, but that was another position where I had been thinking about the Bucs picking at 27, and you've seen it in some mock drafts, partly because it's a pretty deep class, and it seems every year now you're getting a deep class of receivers, but it's a pretty deep class to the point where there are some guys that feel like first rounders that could make it to pick 27 or somewhere near the end there, for instance, for different reasons. A guy that's been towards the end of a lot of first-round mock drafts is Jahan Dotson of Penn State. We've had good luck with Penn State wide receivers. And then recently, a Georgia receiver named George Pickens has been rising up. I think he did well at the combine, and he's been moving up on a lot of mock drafts to the point where that's a guy that maybe the Bucs would have been interested in. And then you got a guy like Jamison Williams from Alabama, who probably, in most cases, would have been higher because ultra productive and very, very fast.
Also, Alabama, usually a good idea to take people from there.
Yeah, but he got hurt in the championship game. He hurt his knee, torn ACL, and he should be fine, right? And I think a lot of teams are like, that's fine, he'll be ready. Or even if we don't have him at the beginning of the season, this is a long-term investment. But I got to believe there are some teams out there that would go in another direction, because there are a lot of receivers available. And so maybe it's possible that a guy like that could fall to the end of the first round. But then again, as we were just talking about that, we prepared for all this, but is that a need now? I'm not so sure it is. And then, I've seen, and I've personally done mock drafts with a cornerback. Like from Clemson, Andrew Booth is a guy that's kind of looking like maybe the third or fourth corner off the board, a guy that could be there in the late 20s. And I thought that, I always think taking cornerbacks in the first round is a good idea personally, but it's a little bit less of a need with Carlton Davis, a guy that you thought, man, we may not be able to keep him. Now we're keeping him. So, it kind of comes to the point now where the Buccaneers are closer to where they were last year when they had brought so many guys back and filled so many holes that even Bruce Arians and Jason Light were saying, we can really go best player available. I don't think they use the word luxury pick, but your second round pick, Kyle Trask, a quarterback for the future, is kind of a luxury pick in the second round. And maybe there was a little bit of need at defensive end when we took Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, but they really could kind of go in any direction. And I think that's kind of where the Buccaneers are at this point in our road to the draft. Now, you could look at a couple positions like interior defensive line, maybe safety with Jordan Whitehead reportedly moving on, that could use a little bit more help than other positions. But I think the Buccaneers are pretty free to go with their best player available now at 27.
Which I'm sure is music to every Bucs fan's
and
ears.
GM's got to love that, right?
Yeah, we just get to take the guy that gets us excited.
So when you're looking at your draft board, which is arranged by position and columns, and then highest is the best, right? And then across are the positions. Instead of looking at one position and going down it, now Jason Light's going to look across the top of the board and who's the best guy there regardless of position. That's
going to be great. All right, well, that's going to do it for us on this edition of Road to the Draft. We'll be back next week to talk about any developments that we think might affect the Buccaneers draft. We'll see you then.